What are you doing?
I'm burying you.
I'm alive! I'm alive!
You're waking the neighbors!
No!
Shut up!
No!
This is your fault. I want to sleep good tonight.
Don't you touch my drum!
Yeah, I'm never gonna stop talking about Kingda Ka. This is just the biggest roller coaster demolition that's ever happened, and still today, most people can't believe the fact that the world's largest roller coaster is closing forever. I get the denial, it's the first stage of grief, but get over it. Stop commenting that they're gonna save Kingda Ka. It's not happening. Just move on to the stage of anger like the rest of us. I never thought Six Flags would shoot themselves in the foot this hard in 2024. What's the total now? 6? 6 rides are being demolished in 1 year alone? Really, again, they couldn't spread this out over multiple years. They really had to take the nuclear option. Well, I hope it works out for them. It won't, but good luck. But I'm tired of being angry at Great Adventure and Six Flags, so I'm gonna move on to the next stage of grief. Bargaining. Yes. But I'm not gonna bargain about them keeping Kingda Ka. I've already accepted that thing's closing. I think it would be more productive to bargain for a different ride to stay. Zumanjaro Drop of Doom. I'm gonna speculate the possibility of that ride sticking around. If we can't keep the world's tallest roller coaster, maybe we can keep the world's largest drop tower. I know it's not the one we would prefer, but I'll take anything at this point. I really don't care. So, Zumanjaro, will this ride be sticking around? Well, no, it's not. I've gone through all the mental gymnastics to somewhat try to rationalize the preservation of Zumanjaro, and it just doesn't work. Of course, it would be nice to think that Zumanjaro Drop of Doom could go on living long after Kingda Ka, but when you look at the logistics of what they would do with Zumanjaro, it realistically wouldn't work. Let me try to explain why. So, when I went on this thought experiment of preserving Zumanjaro, I knew there were only 2 options that could be approached. 1, keeping Zumanjaro on the original tower of Kingda Ka, or relocating Zumanjaro. Those are the only 2 options to keep the ride in operation, besides the well-known choice of option 3, which is complete demolition. But I assume none of us want that, so let's go over the first 2 strategies. So the first one, keeping Zumanjaro on the original structure of Kingda Ka. I'm already going to shoot this one down because it doesn't make any sense. Why would you keep the structure for a completely different ride just to keep a drop tower? Especially since that would mean you would have to preserve the tower for Kingda Ka. And honestly, that would be kind of disrespectful to Kingda Ka. While you only level half of it, and then you keep the top hat, so you have a permanent reminder of a coaster that you can never ride again. I know Six Flags doesn't respect Kingda Ka, but I don't think they would stoop this low. Especially since it's easier to just bulldoze the whole thing. So if it's not possible to keep Zumanjaro on the original top hat of Kingda Ka, then what do? How do you keep this ride alive? Well, you relocate it. You move it somewhere else. The problem is, where do you even relocate this thing? Zumanjaro is not a typical drop tower. This model in particular, the Intamin Giant 8 drop tower, it's more of a parasite drop tower. It's a ride that mounts itself to a structure that already exists. And like a quote-unquote parasite, if the original host dies or gets demolished, then that ride has to go too. So the only way to keep Zumanjaro alive is to find it a new host to attach to. And, you know, that's kind of a big problem. Zumanjaro is a 415-foot drop tower that was already on the tallest roller coaster in the world. And unsurprisingly, there's not a lot of roller coasters that meet that criteria. I have a couple of contenders that can be a worthy suitor for Zumanjaro, but none of them look good. My first pick is probably the most obvious, Top Thrill 2. I mean, it only makes sense. It's a strata coaster. It's only 36 feet shorter than Kingda Ka, so maybe you can shave a few feet off Zumanjaro. Perhaps shorten the brake run, splice new cables. They can try to make it fit on Top Thrill 2 as best as they can. And if they figure it all out, they can potentially reopen the ride. But the big problem with this idea is Top Thrill 2 itself. There is no shot in hell that Cedar Point is even considering this option. Top Thrill 2 is already a major disaster. The original dragster was a disaster. Once they get this ride open, they are not touching it again. This coaster is like a house of cards. If you touch it or blow on it, it's gonna collapse. Maybe not in a literal sense, but you know what I mean. It's fragile. I know I'm kind of overreacting on this. Will Zumanjaro really make a difference to Top Thrill 2? Probably not, but there is a possibility. I'm not sure how true this rumor is, but supposedly, Zumanjaro created a few structural fallacies to Kingda Ka. Nothing major, I'm sure, but apparently, there might have been some behind-the-scenes rumbling going around at Great Adventure about a much-needed maintenance overhaul. Again, this is all hearsay. I don't know if this rumor is true or not. My source is basically a game of telephone, so take whatever I'm saying with a hefty grain of salt. I'm sure Zumanjaro might have changed the integrity to Kingda Ka just a bit, but it probably wasn't anything substantial. I know Zumanjaro and Kingda Ka, they were never allowed to duel, but that wasn't because the structure was unsound or something. No, it was because the state of New Jersey didn't allow Zumanjaro and Kingda Ka to operate simultaneously. It was a state issue, not a structural one. But either way, even if the structural issue was embellished, and if it wasn't that big of a problem, that wouldn't really matter for Cedar Point. Even if Zumanjaro impacted Kingda Ka in any way, that is enough for Cedar Point to say, no, we do not want this thing. Top Thrill 2 has enough problems. We don't need any more. Especially since they already have a drop tower. There's no point of adding Zumanjaro to Top Thrill 2 when Power Tower is only 50 feet away. So they can either have 2 drop towers, or they can add a new one and get rid of an old one. I know Power Tower is not the most popular ride at Cedar Point, but neither is Zumanjaro. I've never been to Great Adventure, but even I know that Zumanjaro never really gets a line. So if they moved it to Cedar Point, would it be more popular? Who really knows? The only reason I can see them doing this and getting rid of Power Tower is if they were trying to make room for something else. But Power Tower doesn't even take up a lot of land. The only way they could clean out a decent sized chunk of space is if they also got rid of Corkscrew. In Cedar Point, they're pretty attached to that ride, so I don't see that happening. Zumanjaro just doesn't work from a logistical standpoint. I do not think Cedar Point would ever mount it to Top Thrill 2, which is a shame. This ride is the prime contender for Zumanjaro because, again, it's a strata coaster, it's over 400 feet, and that's the main qualification for Zumanjaro. And my other contender doesn't really meet this criteria. Red Force at Ferrari Land is similar enough to Kingda Ka and Top Thrill 2, other than the fact that it's only 367 feet. So in order for Zumanjaro to work on Red Force, Ferrari Land would have to make severe modifications to the ride for it even to work. And you know what? That's a tough sell. I don't know if Ferrari Land would be willing to do that. If they really wanted a drop tower, why not just go back to Intamin? They can get their own Giant 8 model instead of harvesting and modifying an old one. So if you can't use Red Force or Top Thrill 2, then that's it. What other ride is there? You have to mount this thing to an existing structure, so there's no other option. The only other ride that's tall enough to house Zumanjaro is Superman, and that ride already has Lex Luthor Drop of Doom. What are you gonna do, add more drop towers? You can't put it on the front of the tower even if you get rid of the Superman track, since the entire thing is at a slope. And the back of the tower has a weird extrusion, so that wouldn't even be possible. Plus, why would you even add more drop towers to the structure? The ride doesn't need more capacity, it doesn't get that long of a line. So if Superman, Top Thrill 2, and Red Force are all out, then that's it. Zumanjaro is out of luck. They can't relocate the ride because there's nowhere to relocate it to. Maybe if Six Flags built a 400-foot pole to attach Zumanjaro, then they can save it. But if you're building a 400-foot tower for a drop ride, why not just build a new drop ride? Why even save Zumanjaro? There's a better opportunity cost. Unfortunately, we just have to say goodbye. There's no salvaging this ride. It's bad enough that we're losing the world's tallest roller coaster, but it's also disappointing that we're losing the world's tallest drop tower. Again. And now that this ride is gone, the tallest drop tower record goes to Lex Luthor until that thing gets destroyed, because Superman's probably closing soon. So that would mean the tallest drop tower in the world would be Giant Drop over in Australia. Oh yay, I would love to travel halfway around the world to ride a shorter drop tower. Oh well. I wish that one aspect of Kingda Ka could have been preserved, and relocating Zumanjaro seemed like it could have been plausible, but when you really dive in and look at the situation, it's pretty obvious that it wouldn't work. Maybe if Cedar Point came around with Top Thrill 2 and actually got the ride operating, there could be a chance of installing Zumanjaro, but I wouldn't count on it.